Now let's start off with question number 5. Rydra Wong, the protagonist of Samuel R. Delany's 1966 novel Babel 17, is a poet, an occupation which, in Delany's work, is not blank. Then there is a colon. Nearly a dozen of the characters that populate his novels are poets or writers. Which choice completes the text with the most logical and precise word or phrase? Is it A, infallible, B, atypical, C, lucrative, or D, tedious? So the hint over here, already with the colon, so the colon over here, and after that the mention of nearly a dozen of the characters that populate his novels are poets or writers. So already it's a very common occupation which he gives to his characters. So which choice completes? So in this case, B is the best answer, atypical, because it logically completes the text discussion of Samuel R. Delany's character, Rydra Wong. As used in this context, atypical, what does atypical mean? It would mean not common, or would mean unrepresentative. So the text indicates that Wong is one of nearly a dozen characters in Delany's novels who are poets or writers. This context conveys that being a poet isn't an atypical occupation for a character in one of Delany's work. It's quite common. Here, the word not is mentioned and then atypical is mentioned. Not is mentioned and atypical is mentioned, which means if you remove A of the atypical and not of the not over there, then Delany's work is typical, we can say. What it means is that it's typical for him to give this type of an occupation, because nearly a dozen means like 12, let's say, characters are poets or writers. A, infallible, that is wrong, because incorrect, because to be accurate or without fault, which wouldn't make sense in this context. The text focuses on the fact that Delany has written many characters who are poets and writers. This context suggests that the occupation isn't atypical for Delany, not that the occupation isn't infallible. Infallible means problematic. And C, lucrative. Choice C is incorrect, because lucrative means to be profitable, which wouldn't make sense in this context. If writing poet characters weren't profitable, it wouldn't be logical to explain this by citing that Delany gave many of his characters the same occupation. Not lucrative, not profitable, and still nearly a dozen of his characters are poets. That doesn't make sense. Then D, tedious, is incorrect, because tedious means to be boring. Which wouldn't make sense in this context. The text focuses on the fact that Delany has written many characters who are poets and writers. This context suggests that the occupation isn't atypical for Delany, not that the occupation isn't tedious. So I hope that's it.